Welcome to Magazine Mania, Episode 1. We're reviewing Sports Review Wrestling, the Winter 1982 episode. Now, looking at the table of contents, you can see all the articles in this magazine. The one I want to note, Dusty's message to Waldo Von Erich, I'm going to whip your Nazi ass. Look on the side, even though these were known as the Aftermags, Bill Apter is the managing editor. Stanley Weston is the president and publisher. You also see noted names, Peter King, Stu Sachs, Craig Peters, Dan Shockett. If you're familiar with the Pro Wrestling Illustrated magazines that became kind of big in the 80s and 90s, they were all the same family of magazines. Now, the first article up, Bob Backlund, my 5 toughest title matches. If you want to read a book that covers his career in full, the Backlund book is amazing. Highly recommend it. And it's going to highlight the 5 matches that are quickly going to be covered here. Now, 4.5-year reign as WWF champion. We don't see it very often. We're kind of seeing it with Roman Reigns right now. Now, the first opponent that they're bringing up is Jimmy Snuka, and you couldn't find a person more different than Backlund. Snuka, more wild, known for the chops, high flying. Bob Backlund, known for that technical ability. You can see from the pictures that Snuka not afraid to get rough. Here you have the Russian Bear versus the All-American Boy at a time when tensions with Russia were high. Now, Ivan Koloff himself, a former WWF champion, so that makes him a great competitor for Backlund, as was superstar Billy Graham, who had previously lost the WWF title to Backlund. It put Graham in a slump that Backlund would later understand when he himself lost the title. Bob Backlund versus Ken Patera. Ken Patera, Olympic weightlifter, strongman competitor, and this could be argued a power versus technical ability. Even though Backlund's powerful, you know, he's more known for his technical ability. And Bob Backlund versus Pat Patterson. Pat Patterson, one of the greatest wrestling minds in the game, came to the WWF, stopped his in-ring wrestling career not too long after getting there, but he was able to be the first Intercontinental Champion. This article is interesting because it's wrestling's 10 most insane men. And a lot of the men on this list are men that were before my time in wrestling, but it's going to be interesting to see who at this time was considered the craziest. Let us know in the comments who might be the 10 most insane men now. First up, Bruiser Brody. Known for his wild, chaotic style, came into the arena swinging that chain, arguably bigger outside of the U.S. than he was inside of the U.S. Ox Baker, this is a man I've never seen wrestle. I'm only familiar with Ox from his look in the magazines and obviously his Price is Right appearance. Just a terrifying look he has on him, had to be something to see in the ring. Kendo Nagasaki is an interesting fellow, managed by J.J. Dillon. There's a British version portrayed by Peter Thornley, but he's a mask guy. The one here is Kazuo Sakurada. You could probably hear my cat singing in the background, but that's because the Mongolian Stomper is on the screen. I always got this guy confused with, I believe, the Mongol, a guy that had like a weird ponytail and black contact lenses, but the Mongolian Stomper was featured on Smoky Mountain Wrestling's Night of Legends. Magnificent Morocco. Another guy just before my time, familiar with him from the Fuji Vice skits, but you can see, large put together guy. You go back and watch those old matches. This guy is a powerhouse. Captain Lou Albano. If I had to think of an insane man in wrestling, it would be this guy. In my time, he was mostly insane as a manager, but he was also wild in the ring before that. You can see the bloody pictures here to show that. Mad Dog Vachon. You can see where Luna Vachon got her style, not only from Mad Dog, but his brother Butcher Paul Vachon. They're both from Montreal, Quebec, Canada, and they're before my time. I haven't seen as many of his matches. The same with Killer Khan. I would get him confused with the Mongolian Stomper and the Mongol. Another reason why I like these magazines, because you're able to see these guys that you might not have seen regularly, either because they were before your time, like George Animal Steele was, or outside of the federation you watch. Now, George Steele, you can see him bloody here, but in my time, he was mostly a comedy wrestler. But I mean, that would happen with a lot of guys that got to Vince at that time. Abdullah the Butcher, somebody I've seen in many magazines, made for magazines, always bleeding, a chaotic wrestling style similar to Bruiser Brody. And Abdullah was kind of as big in the States as he was outside of the States. Another thing that was big in the States, and I'll never understand it, is apartment wrestling. I get the fact that you're going to get viewers because it's women scantily clad, putting each other in wrestling holds. But when you have enough of a hard time defending wrestling as it is, something like this kind of borderline softcore porn, I don't think helps the sport. But it was a product of the times of the wrestling. And I guess it's good to see it here as a historical landmark. Another historical landmark, Mr. Wrestling 2 versus the Masked Superstar. I've been saying it a lot this issue, but a lot of this is before my time. I'm aware Mr. Wrestling 2 was Johnny Walker. Masked Superstar was Bill Eadie, a guy that I would be familiar with in Demolition. But you can see from Mr. Wrestling 2's viewpoint in this article, talking about him getting ready for the match and how this match was one of many and they've all been battles. A lot of the articles around this time were not written by the wrestlers, but written by writers in the wrestler's voice. So it's interesting to look back in time, see how they would frame this. And this article was so well written, it makes me want to go back and watch the matches. Now, the first letter here in the mailbag, a fan disappointed that Ted DiBiase turned rule breaker. Modern fans may forget or never remember that DiBiase used to be a babyface. Next letter, response to Sergeant Slaughter being upset losing the U.S. Championship. Following letter, giving Bob Backlund letters of encouragement. And give us letters of encouragement. Please like, comment, share, subscribe, and tune in next week where we look at Inside Wrestling 1986.